name is Jennifer and welcome back to my channel. So obviously a little something different than my usual content, but wanted to take this opportunity to really chat through kind of what happened at my labor and delivery. I think for me, I've been like really replaying that day over and over again in my head, and I thought it would be kind of cathartic to actually just like talk about it. So I'm gonna try for this not to be a super long video, but I feel like they all kind of end up to be pretty long videos. But I did have a beautiful baby boy. His name is Lucas about a month ago, so I'm about 5 or 6 weeks postpartum now. And yeah, I'm finally ready to talk about it. So like the title says, I gave birth a little bit early. He came like 36 plus 4, but I was admitted to the hospital 36 plus 3. So it was a bit of a surprise to us that he came so early. So what basically happened was my water broke on a Friday afternoon. So I was like literally at work earlier that day and my water broke around 3:40, and I was in my house, I was just walking around, and it literally felt like I was peeing myself. Like I did not know what was going on, and it was just like liquid coming out, and I made it to a toilet pretty quick. And my husband was just like, we need to call the hospital. I was like, well, maybe I'm just peeing myself because like, you know, when you're pregnant, you kind of have those issues. I was like, it's too early. I'm only 36 weeks. And by the way, I've had a really low risk pregnancy. Like everything had been super textbook. I've always had really good test results. I've always measured exactly average on everything from like an ultrasound standpoint. And so for me, I kind of just expected that like I would make it to 40 weeks, just like I was supposed to, just like everybody does in their first pregnancy, because I just had like a very normal pregnancy. So yeah, I called the hospital and they were just like, you know what, just come on in because we would rather have you come in to make sure and send you home than like not take it seriously and all of a sudden like I'm actually in labor, right? So we picked up my hospital bag, which was not fully packed. We just like zipped it up. Whatever was in there was in there. And we went to the hospital. And we got there within an hour of my water breaking. And basically they did like a Fern test to check to see if I was actually ruptured. And so I was just like kind of chilling in the hospital bed until that result came back. And it did come back that my water broke, so I never got to go home. And so the baby was gonna come. So because I had not had my 37-week appointment yet, I didn't take the Group B strep test. So we like submitted for it, but they just started me on an IV of penicillin just in case I was positive, because I guess the test takes a while to come back. So at this point I had an IV, I'm getting penicillin, and they checked me and I was like 1.5 centimeters dilated. So like not much at all. And I was on continuous monitoring at this point. And they were picking up contractions every 6 minutes apart, but I could not feel them. Like I would have told you I was not contracting if they didn't like hook me up to find out. So they really wanted to see if my body would like go into labor, like get with the program on its own. So we didn't start Pitocin, we started Cytotec, which was, as they explained to me, to thin out my cervix and to see if my body would like, you know, do what we think it wants to do. And so we were on that, which was an oral medication, kind of overnight, and I started feeling contractions when they were about 2 to 3 minutes apart. That was about 3 a.m. And we stopped the Cytotec because we're like, okay, we think like my body is moving along. But then like breakfast came around the next day and I was like my body was not really getting with the program. So then we started Pitocin after breakfast on the second day. So at this point it had been like 16 hours since my water broke. And yeah, like I said, I was like feeling the contractions now, but they weren't like super painful. And so I opted for like the nitrous oxide, which was the gas. But at this point, I feel like I hadn't eaten in a while and I was just so sleepy. Like I could not even stay awake long enough to like hold the mask to my face. So like as my contractions started getting stronger, so then I opted for like fentanyl, which is the next step up. And that was via IV, I believe. So by the way, by now my Group B strep had come back and I was negative. So I had all that penicillin for nothing. I will tell you, when like by the time I opted for the fentanyl, it did not do anything for me. They told me they gave it to me. I saw them give it to me and my pain was like not reduced. And my doctor, by the way, like was not trying to check how dilated I was all the time, because after your water breaks, like it can lead to increased like chances of infection if she checks me so often. And so she actually didn't check me again until I opted for the epidural. So by the time I opted for the epidural, it was like 1 p.m. And it was nice because the anesthesiologist didn't have people ahead of me. So I was able to say like, I want the epidural, and he was just like in my room right away. However, it took him 3 times to get it right. Like, he poked me in the back 3 times to try to get the epidural in the right spot, which obviously, like, I would rather have him redo it rather than like put it in slightly wrong and then like it not working, right? So, but then once he got it, it was like immediate relief. Like, I do not regret getting the epidural. It was so painful. My contractions were like 2 minutes apart. They were super painful at that point. So that's why I opted for it. And you literally cannot feel anything while you're on epidural. So anyway, at that point, my doctor checked me again, and I had actually progressed to 7 centimeters, which is great. Yes, honey. So I was at centimeters by then, which is great, but she noted that like the baby hadn't like really gone anywhere. And not only had the baby not gone anywhere, he was stuck. Like, he needed to be rotated. He was kind of tilted against my cervix. And so she was like, you know what, we can try some things to try to rotate him. We can put you in different positions. And so for a while afterwards, the nurses were like kind of flipping me on my left, flipping me on my right. I was getting on my hands and knees, which I can still do while, you know, having the epidural, to try to rotate this baby so that he could like come out the right way. So then, like, as we were doing all of that, we started realizing that the baby was having like decelerated heart rates depending on what position I was in, which is not good. And so they tried to keep me in positions where like the baby's heart rate was stable, which was on my left. Every time I tried to go on my right or even on my back, he was just not happy. And they were just like coming into my room all the time, being like, nope, we need to flip you again. We need to flip you again, because he was not happy. At this point, like, I had a catheter in, he had a scalp electrode in to like monitor his head, because his head was getting quite swollen being stuck against my cervix. And then they also like inserted like a intrauterine pressure or something to monitor my contractions from inside. And so although it like sounds really chaotic, me being on the epidural, I couldn't like feel anything and I wasn't pushing yet. So I was just kind of like waiting to hear them tell me like what was happening. So then by the time my contractions were actually like strong enough for me to push, I was 9 centimeters. And like I even tried pushing, like this baby was not moving. Like this baby was not changing stations. This whole time he was just kind of stuck in one place, probably because his head was swollen from being pressed against my cervix for so long. By like 7 p.m. on that second day, so this would have been 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 28-ish hours since my water broke. They were like, okay, we're kind of like at this place now where like he is not wanting to descend and he's starting to become tachycardic. So like his heart rate was very erratic when I like laid in certain positions. So like there really wasn't a whole lot of positions left for them to try where he wasn't stressed out. And so they were like, we need to talk about pivoting to a C-section. When they were explaining that to me, I kind of felt like, okay, I have like maybe an hour to decide. Like it wasn't like an emergency yet, but they were like, no, like baby is tachycardic. The risk is greatly increasing that like we might harm him in some way if we keep on waiting. And so at that point I did opt for the C-section and they were able to get me in right away. And it was really quick. Like I had the consult at 7 and by 8 o'clock the baby was out and I was like back in my room, which is so crazy. I don't know, like throughout this whole process, even though it totally didn't go the way I wanted it didn't feel panicky. Like I feel like my care team really talked me through what was happening, what they were doing, what decisions I had to make, like what the side effects were gonna be or like the risks. I did throw up at the C-section. I was also having so much trouble staying awake, so I don't quite frankly remember a whole lot. I just remember them like taking almost no time to get the baby out, and then they counted all of like the sponges and everything they were using to make sure they didn't leave anything in me. They probably counted like 3 times, which I really appreciated that they didn't leave anything in me. They stitched me up and like I was back in my hospital room. Like it was so fast. So anyway, I, at the hospital, I actually felt pretty good about what happened, right? Like my baby was 36 and 4 days, which technically they were, they counted that as late preterm. So there was always a chance that the baby was going to need to go to the NICU. The baby did not need to go to the NICU, thank goodness. I was healthy. Baby was relatively healthy. Like he was a little jaundiced, but other than that, healthy. And so I actually felt pretty good about what had happened while I was still at the hospital, and we stayed there for 4 days. But then like towards the end of my stay and for like the first 2 weeks at least coming home, I felt so much grief. Like I was like one mourning the month of pregnancy I didn't get to have, and then I was mourning like the labor and delivery experience that I didn't get to have, you know, because I wanted to deliver like vaginally. And like I said, it was just a really weird feeling because it wasn't panicky and it wasn't chaotic, and all the decisions were made really calmly, but it was just like not at all what I envisioned it to be, you know what I mean? And I was just kind of mourning all of that, and I was like grieving all of that. I was missing him in my belly so much, like I was crying over it a lot. I actually like started going to therapy because of like all of it, and like breastfeeding issues, which was like a whole different video like that I could do. But yeah, now that I'm like over a month postpartum, I feel like I've started to come to terms with it. He's very vocal today. And what really helped me, you know, besides for therapy and talking to mom friends, is just like when I was on Reddit, I was finding that a lot of women had the same experience as me, where like they tried to deliver vaginally, it didn't work out, they've had to pivot to a C-section, and they were feeling the same sense of grief as me. And somebody had said like, you know, as a mom, you make a lot of sacrifices for your kid, and that's, you know, the first sacrifice you had to make was like it all not going to expectations. But at the end of the day, like we made the decisions we had to make in order to save his life. And so I would have made the same decisions over and over again. I would not have done that day any differently. And my care team was really great. All the nurses were great. All the doctors were great. Like I felt super supported through the whole thing. It was just, I feel like social media romanticizes the whole experience, and it romanticizes the transition to being a mom. And I just like wasn't feeling any of that. And so I was like also feeling really guilty about not really enjoying every second of, you know, having a newborn and stuff like that, because I was just like so stressed. But yeah, I feel like I could go on forever about postpartum recovery, postpartum, like how I was feeling, my breastfeeding journey, which I cried so much over. But I feel like that would make this video like literally an hour long. So maybe I'll break it up into separate videos if you guys are interested in hearing some of that. But yeah, I really just wanted to like get off my chest kind of my labor and delivery story. I wanted to document it somewhere. I hope this video has been helpful for you if you're pregnant, like kind of getting ready for labor and delivery. I would say my number one sort of advice is just to go in with no expectations. Like go in, you can have a birth plan, you can go in with like all of this research, but just know that anything could happen. You and your team are going to do everything you can to ensure that you both leave the hospital healthy. So, you know, in that way, the ends sort of justify the means. Anyway, I'm gonna be done rambling here before I like completely lose it. But like I said, I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or like what else you want to hear from me from like a baby standpoint. I do already have a nursery room tour up, so I can link that. But yeah, I do still plan to have my channel be mostly like beauty focused. But it will definitely have some baby stuff sprinkled in because he is just such a big part of my life now. And yeah, I'm so thankful for him, so thankful for my care team. Again, really glad we're both healthy. And so yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!